Like my predecessors here, I'm going to talk really more about history than historiography, but as we know, hard to separate the two. And I'm going to talk about the legacy of the 60s for the American left. It's tempting to view 1968 in the US and Western Europe as a repetition of 1848, and contrary to Marx's axiom, just as tragic the second time around. In both years, radical movements, mainly of young people, made daring and ill-prepared assaults on the forces of order. All were crushed and defeated, and the defeats ushered in a long period of left retrenchment and conservative triumph. I think that temptation should be resisted. Of course, the mirror image of the left, the populist right, also became a mass movement in the late 1960s and quickly seized the political offensive in both Britain and the United States. The right captured a major party and won several national elections. There and elsewhere in the developed capitalist world, left-wing parties stopped, for the most part, touting big, expensive social policies and began to hum the praises of entrepreneurs and free markets, what Tom called neoliberalism. 4 decades after 1848, a far stronger left had been born, based in mass socialist parties of the working class. A year later, these parties founded the Socialist International, the Second International. Nothing like that seems likely to happen again, at least not in post-industrial countries. So after the 60s, in the US and Western Europe, left parties abandoned their socialist dreams and came to adopt a third-way program that inspired almost nobody. But this retrenchment, this declension may obscure, I think, a different sort of advance for the left. Away from the hothouse of national politics, the left gradually reinvented itself. Most young activists shed their ultra-revolutionary illusions and began what German radical Buddha Duschke called in 1968 a long march through the institutions, cultural and social. The left's influence on daily life, while it lacked the drama of mass insurgency, has been quite profound, particularly, I think, on people born since 1968. Long ago, 1969 actually, the British historian J.F.C. Harrison, in a great book on the Owenites, wrote, "The most enduring aspects of a social movement are not always its institutions, but the mental attitudes which inspire it, and which are in turn generated by it." That statement, I think, may be truer for the post-68 left than for any of its predecessors. Consider the fact that most ordinary Americans and Europeans enjoy a degree of personal freedom that was considered ultra-radical in the 1960s. Women can pursue a wide variety of occupations. Gays and lesbians no longer have to lie about their sexuality, at least in most urban areas. Racial identity poses no legal barrier to full participation in civil society, and the urgency of protecting the environment is taken for granted. And it's easier to belong to a minority religion, or none at all, in America, and certainly in Europe, than it's ever been before in history. The 45 statement in 1962 began with the statement, "Making values explicit should be the central task of politics. We regard men as infinitely precious and possess of unfulfilled capacities for reason, freedom, and love." That sentence, its gender bias aside, it was 62 after all, captures with an aptly romantic tone how 68ers came to believe a better society would be built. Radical Democrats would liberate themselves by expanding the definition of freedom itself. Of course, this impulse sometimes led to forms of identity politics that sometimes descended into self-parody, but I think expanded and durable meaning of freedom did win the day. Today, most people under 40, even a good many of those who vote Republican, reject all but the most subtle forms of race-baiting, homophobia, and gender discrimination. As Richard Rorty once put it, the new left greatly diminished the amount of sadism in American culture, and much of European culture as well.